Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. So with me here is Milan Otajovic of Insight Plum for our second partner showcase recording. Today, we're going to walk through the supply chain disruptions, ESG and procurement and data transformation. But before we get started here, I'll let Milan briefly introduce himself and we can get going.
Hello, everyone. My name is Milan and I work for Insight Plum as a director of partnerships and alliances. And together with our partners like Xeeva, we are trying to bring a fresh new wind to the procurement technology world and helping our customers to get most out of their technologies. Together with partners like Xeeva, we are transforming the way how the procurement and supply chain organizations help their own businesses to thrive in this complicated and ever-changing environment.
Appreciate that, Milan. So like I said, everyone, today's focus, we'll get into the supply chain disruptions. So, Milan, for the first question we have here today, what are some of the, disruptions you've seen around the globe and Europe, and how does this affect, businesses' daily operations, and how does that tie into, the procurement landscape?
Well, thanks for the question, because right now I think is the right time to discuss and talk about these topics. We remember in our first episode, we have been speaking about post-COVID times. Unfortunately, things have not improved very much since then. Obviously, business environment was hoping that after COVID pause in the business and spending, things will get again to growth. But we see, based on what's happening on the international security basically scene and what's happening on the financial markets, that the situation is far from improving. Right now, at least in Europe, but I think the global impact of the European affairs right now is pretty visible. We see a big disruptions caused by the war in Ukraine, and obviously that brings a lot of uncertainties. The second consequence of this war in Ukraine is the increased demand for diversification of energy supplies for European companies mostly. And Europe being very heavily manufacturing-based economy or economies, this has a huge impact on businesses, but also a huge impact on societies, on the daily lives of the people. So on one hand, you have really a hope for recovery after the COVID, but then the war and the shortage of energies or the, let's say, not the shortage, but the period of time where most of the countries and the businesses are switching from existing sources of energy supplies to the new energy suppliers is causing some turbulence. Add to that increased inflationary pressures. So inflation is globally on the rise. I think in US it's right now a little bit better, but not really still as expected, with the slight decrease of the pace of the inflation. But in Europe, we still need to see how the European Central Bank will fight the inflationary pressures. But taking into consideration the 2 or 2.5 years of the COVID problems, now the problems with the energies and the inflationary pressures all around the world, we think, or I believe, this is visible to every single business out there, that the situation will not stabilize very soon. So for us, as we speak about supply chain, this is one of the very key reasons why the supply chain management is so critical, and why the supplier management, the possibility to work dynamically with suppliers, ability to find new suppliers, and ability to manage the supplies of different raw materials, energies, and other, let's say, parts, components, or services is so critical for business survival. Let me give you a short example here. Automotive industry, I think it's heavy for all countries all around the world, being it in Asia, in America, in Europe. The first of all, during the COVID times, we had the shortage of chips, and that shortage of microprocessors and other semiconductor components is lasting till today. Now, the consumption or the demand for the cars naturally decreased during the COVID, but the less supply on the market also means that the prices of the cars went up, the waiting times went up. Add to this situation current problems with energies. Energy, it's not the fuel for the cars, but it's the fuel for manufacturing the basic components of the cars, like the engines, like transmissions, and many other parts of the car. So aluminum, for example, which is very heavily demanding electricity to produce aluminum, or even the iron smelters, they all need energy. Since the energy prices are skyrocketing, automotive industry is hit again with additional shortage of supply, or maybe not shortage of supply, but by shortage of affordable supply. And that is really, really hurting very much the whole industry. And as we know, it's an industry which is tying in lots of other suppliers, lots of other companies supplying to automotive industry, lots of services, goods, components, etc., etc. So you see how unprecedented situations, which are accumulated over 3 years now, let's say, are having very much impact on almost every single person's life and economies globally. So this is to introduce the topic, actually.
Milan, thank you for that response and touching upon the different problems and challenges faced within the different industries. I know you briefly mentioned that Europe obviously has a large industrial manufacturing focus. So what are some of the other specific problems you've seen within that industry? And what are some ways that businesses can sort of combat those issues?
The industry in Europe actually is pretty much interconnected. All of the industries, from chemical, petroleum, energy, automotive, whatever you say, are very much interconnected. So all these effects, if I use the example of automotive industries, those examples are valid for other industries as well. Right. What we see right now happening in Europe is really huge wave of initiatives and projects or programs being launched by the companies to actually look into existing supplier base, to look into existing products and find ways to optimize, either on the product side, finding alternate suppliers, alternate parts, or alternate manufacturing processes. That takes time, obviously, but that's what is happening right now. Or on the other hand, finding and searching globally for alternates, but within the constraints of some of the EU strategic initiatives, for example, on environmental policies or on social and labor related topics. So in addition to the economical and geopolitical pressures, within EU, we have a specific frameworks or specific initiatives which are also forcing manufacturers, industrial companies to look at alternates within specific framework. So it's very critical, and it's happening right now, that companies tap the data they have or they are available in the market in an open domain or within commercial sources, where they can really find the best possible alternate suppliers or completely new suppliers and plug them as quickly as possible into their value chain or the supply chain process. And that is very much fueling lots of projects in Europe right now. Some companies who are more advanced and more mature on the digital supply chain ladder, they would be prepared for it better, but still there is some very focused effort around these topics. The other companies, unfortunately, need to start from a lower level. On the other hand, they can immediately jump to a new or to the very much latest level, thanks to maybe new technologies which are available and which are growing within the market We have seen it in the past. There are so many new software and technology solutions who are able to help customers actually to mitigate these risks and actually help them to get to a new suppliers, new supply chain models, to plan better, to optimize what is there, or to find completely new sources. So like COVID forced digital transformation of the overall workforce, now I think this new situation globally is forcing companies to look really, really seriously at the data, not just the processes within the procurement supply chain management.
Perfect. Milan, again, thank you for the thought out answer and the examples again. But I believe that's a great segue into our next topic to go into a little deeper. So with the sustainability efforts, how does ESG reporting come into play? I know you touched upon that with supplier identification and discovery through Xeeva Marketplace, for example. But
Mhm.
can you touch upon that a little further?
Yeah, I think it's just natural extension of what we are discussing right now. Maybe it's specific to Europe, but also in the US. I remember we have seen initiatives related to environmental, social, or governance aspects of running the businesses, and supporting various aspects of sustainable business growth. Uh, if we refer back to United Nations in sustainability development goals, those are actually the overall driving goals which countries or groups of countries like EU implement into their own internal policies. And when we look at the businesses, individual businesses, many of these sustainable development goals can be implemented within the business right now on a certain level. Let's say if we focus on environment itself, maybe most people will think about carbon dioxide emissions or other things. But there are other aspects which are quite important to measure. If you are a chemical or oil and gas industry, you will have other substances to deal with. So it is very important for companies to really start understanding better what the ESG frameworks usually are, because every company operates in some legal environment and the environment dictates where the priorities should be. But not every company has the same starting level. So first, which I would say, is to start looking at where the companies operate and what environmental, social, or governance target they need to focus on. So every company is different. Reporting on ESG is actually just the output of the initiative which needs to be in place, or rather a program than an initiative, which implements the ESG goals, KPIs from the very beginning of the value chain, starting with the suppliers, continuing through the internal operations of the company, out to the output, to the sales and delivery part of the business. And throughout the whole value chain, there are points where we can measure, where we can probe how the performance against the set or agreed KPIs or ESG goals is done, what is the gap, where the improvements can be made, and then actually only we can set up the proper governance around ESG goals. And then the reporting obviously helps you to achieve the business posture to the external world, to your actually customers, to your governments, and then you can actually claim that you are a company fully embracing ESG reporting or being compliant with all the rules. But actually compliance is not the goal. The goal is really to improve the environmental and social state of the art within the whole society. So reporting is one of the tools, but it's not done for the reporting. It's done for the more important cause than just the reporting itself.
And Milana, you mentioned earlier with the different levels of businesses and expertise they have, some obviously have the bandwidth to invest in these practices, or actually, some might be more resistance to change. So how would that play into effect with the different levels of businesses? What are some maybe minor changes one can make into their daily routines, daily operations, or for their long-term goals as well, to have those more, environmentally sustainable practices?
Right. This is the easy part is actually to look at the supply side, because nowadays most of the suppliers, whether you source through the tools like Xeeva or you use the traditional Excel-based sourcing, actually you still can find a lot of information about sustainability posture or sustainability score of the suppliers. However, the important part is to understand that also your suppliers have their own suppliers. So you have to go one level deeper maybe, and really to understand all the levels, level 1, level 2 of your supply base, and source responsibly from those suppliers who really fulfill the criteria which you believe you will need to meet, because you have your local regulation or local legislation, which is giving you clear frameworks, or you are an ambitious company which is actually striving to achieve more than the local regulations give you. But the easiest part to start with is definitely start with the supply side. And I think that's where a large percentage of the suppliers can already fulfill some of or all of the, let's say, measurements or metrics which you want to measure, from the state of the labor, diversity of the labor workforce employed, the environmental footprint you need to produce your goods, etc., down to transparency on all the financial reporting and everything which is needed. I think the more difficult part is to do the internal ESG measurements and setting the internal KPIs, because sometimes this means changing your processes, changing your KPIs for your management. Management, if top level management down to the factory floor managers are not incentivized for being compliant with the ESG goals, it's very difficult to expect any meaningful change. So the change needs to come from top to bottom, but everybody needs to be committed and understand the goals and why ESG is so important for a company. But this is really more difficult and takes more time and probably more effort to set up the proper ESG frameworks and KPIs and implement them in the real life internally, than just reaching out to the suppliers who are already reporting properly, or open data, or they play with the open books, so to speak.
I know you just mentioned data there, so that is a nice, segue again to our next topic about the data transformation. So I know we touched upon that in our last showcase series, but like you said today, stressing the importance of having that quality data, the digital transformation. What are some of the best practices for transforming your data, the importance of doing so? So if you want to talk about that.
Right, and I think really it's now probably by the end of this discussion, we will close the whole loop around data. In my first topic, I said the disruptions in the market or in the world as we know it are so dramatic and so quick that the traditional ways of dealing with that will not work. On the ESG side, we mentioned data. You need data. You need inputs from what you produce, what your supplier are producing, how they ESG posture is. It's all about data. Nowadays, really, if somebody thinks that the procurement and supply chain management is about process automation, they are really maybe 5-10 years back in their thinking.
Mhm.
Right now, companies who have data, who know how to leverage the data, or who have tools who help them to leverage the data, are those who will be much faster and nimble in the market. In this situation where people will compete, or companies, businesses will compete for sustainable suppliers, for suppliers with the lead times which are still acceptable to end customers, suppliers who can really produce and deliver on time, on quality, or within certain limits of, let's say, polluting the environment. Those suppliers will be very soon thriving in this environment, but finding them requires data. And those who don't have data, they will be late. Probably that will be having a real impact on their future growth, if not even existence of the company. So in a nutshell, working with data becomes absolutely critical for survival of any business today. Not even business, even organizations like within the public sectors, from the governments to the local municipal governments and municipal councils. They need to procure as well lots of goods and services. So data buy you speed, and speed buys you a good position within the market, so you can still get a good deal out there, which is still perceived as a key function of a procurement. Give us the best value for what we really need, find us the best value supplier. Now, the data transformation is a science or art. I don't know still whether it's more art or science, but probably it's both. Doing it all on your own, yeah, it's possible, but it takes lots of time and lots of efforts, and you still need tools. So my recommendation usually to customers is, don't waste time. If you don't have large data science or data management departments, go with the tools which are already in the market. Find the best tool which can cover your particular needs. For example, Xeeva, if we look at the spend analytics, if we look at how you can classify and identify savings opportunities, how you can look into suppliers' ESG reports, then we can really think that solutions like Xeeva can help customers to basically jump the queue and get ahead of the queue in terms of competing for these suppliers who are now needed more than before, probably because of all the disruptions in the world. So the data part and the data transformation part, you can do it yourself, or you can leave it to tools or solutions who are available in the market today. From my personal experience, I know that Xeeva is really advanced, but with a low intrusion within existing IT ecosystem or within existing IT infrastructure. So those tools which don't need so much implementation time, really don't need so much engineering on site, can be implemented quickly or deployed as a service. They really give you a competitive advantage if you are serious about leveraging your company's data, being from procurement sourcing systems, MRPs, ERPs, or other supply chain systems. If you are serious about that, I would highly recommend most of the customers to go for these solutions like Xeeva has.
And Milan, I just want to touch on that, some companies, like you said, they don't have the specific data science departments, not enough bandwidth, or just that resistance to change from top down. So, a solution like spend analytics with the intelligent opportunities, the category wave planning, the data enrichment, and proper classification can help not only with your sustainability and ESG reporting, but, just automate your processes and, transform your data as well too. So thank you for touching on that. But I know those were our three topics we really wanted to hone in on today. So that, concludes our discussion for today's showcase. Milan, thank you so much again for joining the call, walking through the solutions. We really appreciate it. For those tuning in, thank you for tuning in. Look forward to doing this next time.
Thank you, Andrew and Xeeva team. I really appreciate, and I'm happy that we can discuss these topics. They are really well-timed and relevant right now. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you.